Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. And we are examining the Olivet Discourse, Matthew 24 and 25. And we're looking at Jesus' prediction of the wars, the rumors of wars, nation rising against nation, kingdom against kingdom, famine, pestilence, earthquake in various places, which Jesus called the beginning of birth pangs. I've been sharing with you over the last several videos that this reference to the birth pangs is taken directly out of the well-known, well-attested, well-accepted Jewish narrative of eschatology. And that is that in the last generation, before the coming of the Lord, the judgment and the resurrection, there would be a time of these events happening, leading directly into a time of tribulation, and that tribulation would be a time of testing, a time of trial, a time of purification, that the righteous remnant might come through the tribulation into the resurrection and the kingdom. We find this very motif. I've shared with you, several Old Testament prophecies that use the imagery of the birth pangs. And here's what several scholars have noted. This motif of birth pangs, and it's evident. I mean, it's simply undeniable in the passages that I've shared with you, that the imagery of the birth pangs is always set forth in the image of some kind of national judgment. It might be even the judgment of Babylon or of Assyria. But it was most assuredly used of the impending judgment of the 10 northern tribes. It was used of the impending destruction of Jerusalem in 586 BC. And so in Hebraic thought, they looked upon, they saw, and they recognized that the imagery of the birth pangs indicated a time of national judgment. That national judgment might be these other nations, these pagan nations that were about to be judged, and they were fearful, as in Jeremiah chapter 50. But it was also applied to Israel as well, both Israel and to Judah. That's what is so important. So, here in Matthew chapter 24, Jesus is using that language, that imagery, that motif that was well known by any Jewish listener. Pardon me. They would have known it meant impending national judgment. They would have known it's not reference to thousands of years. Somebody told me recently on Facebook, well, we today are in the Great Tribulation, and we've been in the Great Tribulation since the first century. By the way, did you know that that's Gregory Beale's view that he sets forth? That's nonsense. With all due respect to Mr. Beale, that's nonsense. Have we, for 2,000 years, been in the Great Tribulations, which is the greatest tribulation that the world has ever seen before or since? That is such a historically naive, historically false claim as to be literally unbelievable. Now then, got on a soapbox, didn't I? Okay. It's important for us to see that not only do we find these Old Testament references to the birth pangs, but as I've shared with you already, Paul says in Romans chapter 8, verse 18 and following, we know that the whole creation groans together in birth pangs until now. Now, it's important that you see that Paul is emphasizing his then present time. Paul said, I reckon that the sufferings of this present time. N.T. Wright points out numerous times in his writings of how Paul contrasts the former times with his now time. As a matter of fact, in the original Greek, it is, I reckon that the sufferings of this now time. That was Paul's contemporary time. So Paul's contemporary time was the time of the birth pains. Have you ever heard of a pregnancy that lasted 2,000 years? God promised in Isaiah chapter 66, a passage we've noted before, He asked a rhetorical question. Shall I bring to the time of birth and not bring forth? And the answer is, of course, no, I will not do that. Okay, so God promised that when the time of the birth pangs came, the birth would come. Well, what would be the birth? The manifestation of the sons of God. The glory to be revealed. That demands, ladies and gentlemen, that the birth, i.e. the resurrection, the redemption, the adoption, was all to take place in that generation. This theme of the birth pangs of Messiah, you know, Paul said in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, Paul says, when they shall say, peace, peace, then sudden destruction shall come upon them as travail, as labor pains on a woman. And that contrast, Paul said, that day will not come upon you, it'll come on them. You see, that's impending judgment. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 3. And, you know, we might even find an allusion to this in Revelation chapter 20, and the woman with the crown on her head giving birth to a son, and the dragon chasing that son, persecuting, attempting to kill the son, unable to do so, but then persecuting that seed, the seed of the son. We probably find a good reference there to this time of Messianic woes and the birth pangs of Messiah. And by the way, over the next several videos, we're going to segue, pardon me, into a discussion of what Jesus then said in Matthew 24 and verse 9. Then they will deliver you up. Then when? During this time of the birth pangs of Messiah, part and parcel of that, they will deliver you up to tribulation. They will kill you, and you shall be hated by all nations for my name's sake. Okay. Do we find on the pages of the New Testament the fulfillment of Matthew chapter 24 and verse 9? The unequivocal answer is yes, we do. In virtually every single New Testament book, the fulfillment of Jesus' words. And guess what that means? That means the coming of the Lord, the judgment, and the resurrection was to be in that generation. Because why? This suffering, this tribulation that Jesus is predicting was for the purification of the righteous remnant, so that they could then enter the kingdom at the judgment and at the resurrection. And that motif of suffering, purification, parousia is found throughout the entirety of the New Testament. And not only were they suffering, not only were they being purified, but they were promised imminent vindication, pardon me, imminent glorification in their lifetime. Boy, this is powerful stuff. You don't want to miss all this. And by the way, I develop all of it in my book, We Shall Meet Him in the Air, The Wedding of the King of Kings. Go to my website, donkpreston.com, bibleprophecy.com, and at the top of the page there is a banner. You know, regular price on this book, $23.95 plus $4.95 shipping. For the month of April 2019, very special price, $19.95, delivered to your door, no extra charges, nothing extra. $19.95, total delivered price. It's going to save you almost $10. You will be absolutely stunned at the clarity of the evidence, the amount of evidence to show that everything that Jesus foretold right here in Matthew chapter 24 happened in the first century. Okay, do not forget. What do I do with it? Okay. Tomorrow, we will continue our examination, our response and refutation to Sam Frost's book, The Parousia of the Son of Man. Mr. Frost makes the following, I would consider fatal comment. The eschatological coming of Elijah, then, is John the Baptist. This coming of Elijah is tied to the broad meaning of, quote, restore all things, unquote. You don't want to miss tomorrow. So I'll see you on the flip side.